The bass thumped through my chest like a second heartbeat as I watched my wife of 15 years turn into someone I didn't recognize. The neon lights of Club Nexus painted her face in alternating shades of pink and blue, and with each flash, she looked more like a stranger. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Come on, Danny, loosen up, Marta shouted over the music, her third martini sloshing dangerously close to the rim of her glass. You look like you're at a funeral, not a celebration. I forced a smile and took another sip of my beer. The celebration she was referring to was her promotion to creative director at Henderson & Associates. After 12 years of clawing her way up the advertising ladder, she'd finally made it to the top floor. I should have been proud. Hell, I was proud. But watching her grind against her 20-something coworkers while I stood in the corner like a piece of furniture wasn't exactly my idea of a good time. I'm fine, babe, I called back, though she was already turning away, drawn back into the orbit of her work friends like a moth to flame. That's when I noticed him. Jake Morrison, her new assistant creative director. 28 years old, all jawline and designer stubble, wearing a shirt that probably cost more than I made in a week running my auto repair shop. He was watching Marta with the kind of hunger that made my stomach clench. Your wife's really something, said a voice beside me. I turned to see Sophie Chen, Marta's college roommate and supposed best friend. She was nursing a whiskey neat and wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Really knows how to work a room. Yeah, she's always been social, I replied, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. Sophie laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Social, that's one word for it. Before I could ask what she meant, the music suddenly cut out. The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers. All right, party people, time for a little game, truth or dare, VIP style. The crowd cheered. Marta clapped her hands together like a teenager, her eyes bright with alcohol and excitement. Someone pushed her toward the center of the dance floor, and she stumbled slightly before catching herself. Marta Henderson, the DJ called out. You're up first, birthday girl. It's not my birthday, she laughed, but she was already moving to the center of the circle that had formed around her. Even better, promotion celebration, truth or dare. Dare, she shouted without hesitation. The crowd whooped. I felt my chest tighten. All right, here's your dare, the DJ said, his voice taking on a theatrical tone. I want you to pick someone in this crowd, anyone, and tell us what you'd trade them for. Marta spun around, her eyes scanning the faces around her. When her gaze landed on me, I saw something flicker across her expression, something that looked almost like disgust. She raised her martini glass high above her head. I know exactly who I'd trade. The crowd fell silent, waiting. Who wants to trade this husband for a cocktail? The words hit me like a physical blow. The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Marta was pointing directly at me, her face flushed with alcohol and something else, something that looked like genuine malice. Come on, ladies, she continued, emboldened by the crowd's reaction. He's house-trained, knows how to fix cars, and he's got a steady income. Surely that's worth at least a cosmopolitan. More laughter. Someone started chanting, trade, trade, trade. And soon the entire VIP section had joined in. That's when Sophie stepped forward. Deal, she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. I'll take him. The crowd went wild. Marta's smile faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. Sophie, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, she said, trying to keep her tone light. Oh, I think I do, Sophie replied, walking toward me with predatory grace. I've always wondered what it would be like to have a man who actually comes home at night. The implication hung in the air like smoke. I saw Marta's face go pale beneath her makeup. Sophie reached me and placed her hand on my chest. What do you say, Danny? Want to be traded? Before I could respond, she grabbed my shirt and pulled me toward her, pressing her lips against mine in a kiss that tasted like whiskey and revenge. The crowd exploded. When Sophie finally released me, I looked over to see Marta standing frozen in the center of the circle, her martini glass hanging limply from her fingers. Marta! Jake appeared at her side, his hand on her lower back. You okay? She looked at him, then at me, then at Sophie. Something shifted in her expression, a mask slipping into place. I'm fine, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around us. Just fine. But I could see the truth in her eyes. She wasn't fine. She was furious. And for the first time in months, I found myself smiling. The ride home was silent except for the hum of the engine and Marta's occasional sighs. She stared out the passenger window, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. I kept my eyes on the road, but I could feel the tension radiating from her like heat from a furnace. That was quite a show back there, I said finally as we pulled into our driveway. It was just a game, Danny. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Don't read too much into it. A game. I put the car in park and turned to look at her. You offered to trade me for a drink in front of all your coworkers. That's your idea of a game? She finally turned to face me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Cold calculation. You're being dramatic, she said. It was funny. Everyone was laughing. Everyone except me. She shrugged and got out of the car without another word. I sat there for a moment, watching her walk up to our front door, her heels clicking against the concrete. 15 years of marriage, and I felt like I was looking at a complete stranger. Inside, she went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. I could hear her on the phone, her voice low and urgent, but I couldn't make out the words. I grabbed another beer from the fridge and settled into my recliner, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Bill. Saw you guys come home. Everything okay? Looked tense? Bill was retired, spent most of his time on his front porch with a pair of binoculars, claiming to be bird watching. We all knew he was really keeping tabs on the neighborhood, but he was harmless enough. Long night, I texted back. Been a lot of long nights lately. Marta's been leaving pretty late, coming home pretty early, if you know what I mean. I stared at the message, my beer halfway to my lips. What do you mean? Maybe we should talk in person. Tomorrow? I set down my beer, my hands suddenly unsteady. Yeah, tomorrow. The next morning, Marta was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Early meeting. Don't wait up tonight. M. Don't wait up tonight. Like I was some kind of roommate instead of her husband. I found Bill on his porch at 9 a.m. sharp, coffee cup in one hand, binoculars in the other. Danny, he said, nodding toward the empty chair beside him. We need to talk. I sat down, my stomach already churning. What's going on, Bill? He set down his binoculars and turned to face me. How long have you and Marta been having problems? We're not having problems, I said automatically. Son, I've been married for 43 years. I know what problems look like. He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. Marta's been leaving the house around 9 p.m. 3 nights a week for the past 2 months. She comes home around 2 a.m., parks down the street, and walks up to the house. Sometimes she sits in her car for 10-15 minutes before coming in. My mouth went dry. Maybe she's working late. Maybe. Bill picked up his coffee cup, took a slow sip. Or maybe she's doing what my neighbor's wife was doing when she started acting the same way. Which was cheating on him with her boss. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. Cheating. I'd suspected, of course. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started doing her hair differently. But hearing it out loud made it real in a way that terrified me. You don't know that, I said weakly. No, I don't, Bill agreed. But I know what I've seen. And last Tuesday night, I saw her come home with someone. My vision went blurry around the edges. Who? Young guy, tall, dark hair, drove a BMW. They sat in his car for about 20 minutes before she got out and came inside. Jake. It had to be Jake. Danny. Bill's voice seemed to come from very far away. You okay? I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the porch floor. I have to go. Danny, wait. But I was already walking away, my mind racing. I needed proof. I needed to see for myself. That night, I told Marta I was going to my buddy Mike's house to watch the game. She barely looked up from her laptop. Have fun, she said absently. I'll probably be asleep when you get back. Instead of going to Mike's, I drove to the parking lot across from Henderson and Associates and waited. At 8:47 p.m., I saw Marta's car pull out of the office garage. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the radio. She didn't go to another office building. She didn't go to a client dinner. She drove straight to the Marriott downtown and pulled into the valet circle. I parked across the street and watched as she got out of her car, smoothed down her dress, a red number I'd never seen before, and walked into the hotel like she owned the place. 10 minutes later, Jake's BMW pulled up to the valet stand. I sat there for 3 hours, waiting. When they finally came out together, they were holding hands. Jake said something that made Marta throw her head back and laugh. Really laugh, the way she used to laugh with me. They kissed goodbye right there under the hotel lights, and I felt something inside me break. But as I watched Jake's BMW disappear into traffic and Marta get into her car to drive home to me, I realized something else. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was angry. And I was going to do something about it. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I needed time to think, time to plan. Marta had already left for her early meeting, so I had the house to myself. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call her right then and there, to scream and yell and demand answers. But another part of me, the part that had been building up steam since last night, wanted something else entirely. I wanted revenge. My phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Mike's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, man," he said when I answered. "Heard you called in sick. You okay?" Mike Torres had been my best friend since high school. We'd started working on cars together in his dad's garage when we were 16, and even though he'd gone on to become a successful contractor while I'd stayed in the auto repair business, we'd remained close. If there was anyone I could trust with this, it was him. "Can you come over?" I asked. "I need to talk to someone." "On my way." 20 minutes later, Mike was sitting across from me at my kitchen table, listening as I told him everything, the club, the hotel, the whole sorry mess. "Jesus, Danny," he said when I finished. "I'm sorry, man. That's rough." "What would you do?" I asked. "If it was Lisa?" Mike was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. "Honestly, I'd probably want to kill the guy." "But you wouldn't." "No, I wouldn't, but I'd sure as hell make sure everyone knew what kind of woman I'd been married to." That afternoon, Mike and I drove to O'Malley's, a dive bar on the south side where we used to hang out in our 20s. It was the kind of place where nobody asked questions and everybody minded their own business. Perfect for the conversation we needed to have. "So what's the plan?" Mike asked, sliding into a booth in the back corner. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "I just know I'm not going to sit back and let her make a fool of me." "Fair enough. What do you need from me?" Before I could answer, someone slid into the booth beside Mike. I looked up to see Tommy Brennan, another old friend from the neighborhood. Tommy worked construction with Mike and had a reputation for being resourceful. "Mike texted me," Tommy said by way of explanation. "Told me you were having some trouble with the missus." I glared at Mike. "I didn't say you could." "Relax," Tommy interrupted. "We've all been there. Well, not all of us. I'm too smart to get married, but I've seen it happen." "This isn't some joke, Tommy." "Who's joking?" His expression turned serious. "Your wife's cheating on you, right? With some pretty boy from her office?" I nodded reluctantly. "And you want to do something about it?" Another nod. Tommy leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I know a guy who knows a guy. We could make this problem disappear, if you know what I mean." "Jesus, Tommy," Mike hissed. "He doesn't want the guy dead." "Who said anything about dead? I'm talking about a conversation, a friendly chat about boundaries." I held up my hand. "No, nothing violent. I'm not going to jail over this." "So what then?" Tommy asked. I thought about it for a moment. "I want her to feel the way she made me feel, humiliated, embarrassed, like everyone's laughing at her behind her back." "Now you're talking," Tommy said with a grin. "Public humiliation, that's an art form." We spent the next 2 hours planning. Tommy, it turned out, had a talent for psychological warfare. Mike was the voice of reason, making sure we didn't cross any legal lines. And I was the one with inside information about Marta's weaknesses, her insecurities, the things that would hurt her most. By the time we left O'Malley's, we had the beginnings of a plan. The first phase was information gathering. Tommy had a cousin who worked as a bartender at the hotel where I'd seen Marta and Jake. He could find out how long they'd been meeting there, how often, whether they were using fake names. Mike would help me with surveillance. He had a van with tinted windows that he used for work, perfect for stakeouts. And I would start documenting everything: photos, times, locations, building a case. "Remember," Mike said as we stood in the parking lot outside O'Malley's, "we're not trying to destroy her life. We're just trying to level the playing field." "Speak for yourself," Tommy muttered, but he was smiling when he said it. That night, Marta came home at her usual time, acting like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek and asked about my day, and I played along, telling her about a fictional problem with a customer's transmission. "Poor baby," she said, running her fingers through my hair. "You work so hard." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. Here she was, playing the loving wife, when just 24 hours earlier she'd been in a hotel room with another man. "How was your day?" I asked. "Oh, you know, meetings, deadlines, the usual chaos." She moved toward the stairs. "I'm exhausted. Think I'll take a bath and go to bed early." "Sure," I said. "I'll be up later. Just want to watch some TV." She paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Danny, about last night at the club. I hope you know I didn't mean anything by it. It was just, you know how I get when I've been drinking." "I know," I said, forcing a smile. "Don't worry about it." She smiled back, but there was something calculating in her eyes. Good. I'd hate for a silly game to come between us. After she went upstairs, I sat in my recliner and stared at the ceiling, listening to the sound of running water from the bathroom above. She was washing off the evidence of her betrayal, getting ready to sleep beside me like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something that was going to change everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. Talked to my cousin. Your wife and her boyfriend have been regulars for 6 weeks. Always get the same room. Always pay cash. Thought you should know. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of lies. Of coming home to me with his hands still on her skin. I deleted the message and turned off the TV. It was time to get to work. 3 days later, I had enough evidence to bury her. Photos of them entering and leaving the hotel, credit card receipts from restaurants I'd never heard of, text messages I'd managed to photograph when she left her phone on the kitchen counter. But it was Tommy's cousin who provided the most damning evidence. They're there right now, he texted me on Thursday night. Room 412. Been there since 7. I was sitting in Mike's van across from the hotel, my hands shaking as I typed back, Thanks. You don't have to do this tonight, Mike said from the driver's seat. We could wait, plan it better. No, I said. I'm done waiting. I got out of the van and walked across the street, my heart pounding. The hotel lobby was all marble and gold, the kind of place that made my work clothes feel shabby and out of place. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt like it took forever. Room 412 was at the end of the hall. I stood outside the door for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds from inside. Laughter, music, the clink of glasses. They were having a party while I sat at home like an idiot, waiting for my cheating wife to come back to me. I knocked on the door. The sound stopped immediately. I heard whispered voices, movement, then footsteps approaching the door. Who is it? Jake's voice, nervous. Room service, I said. The door opened, and Jake appeared in the gap, wearing nothing but a hotel bathrobe. When he saw me, his face went white. Danny, he stammered. This isn't... I pushed past him into the room. Marta was sitting on the bed, wrapped in a sheet, her hair messed up and her lipstick smeared. When she saw me, she made a sound like a wounded animal. Danny, please, she started, but I held up my hand. Don't, I said. Just don't. The room was a mess. Clothes scattered on the floor, empty champagne bottle on the nightstand, rose petals on the bed. They'd really gone all out for their romantic evening. How long? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Danny, let me explain. How long, Marta? She looked at Jake, then back at me. 2 months. Since before your promotion? A nod. Did you get the promotion because of him? No. The word came out too fast, too defensive. It wasn't like that. But Jake's expression told a different story. He was looking at Marta with something that might have been disgust, and I realized that maybe she wasn't the only one who'd been using someone. Get dressed, I told her. Both of you. Danny, get dressed, or I call hotel security and let them sort this out. They scrambled for their clothes while I stood by the window, looking down at the street below. I could see Mike's van in the parking lot, could imagine him waiting for me to come back down and tell him it was over. Okay, Marta said finally. She was wearing her red dress, but it looked wrinkled now, cheap. We're dressed. I turned around. They were standing side by side like children waiting to be scolded, and I felt a surge of power that was almost intoxicating. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Marta, you're going to go home and pack your things. You have until Sunday to get out of my house. Danny, please, we can work this out. And Jake, I continued, ignoring her, you're going to stay away from my wife. In fact, you're going to stay away from me entirely. Because if I see you again, if I even hear your name, I'm going to make your life very difficult. Do you understand? Jake nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Good. I looked back at Marta. 15 years, Marta. 15 years I gave you. And this is what you do with it. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm sorry, Danny. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Yes, you did, I said quietly. You meant for all of it to happen. The only thing you didn't mean was for me to find out. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Marta, that little stunt you pulled at the club, offering to trade me for a cocktail, I hope it was worth it, because now everyone's going to know exactly what kind of woman you really are. I left them there in their wreckage and walked back to the elevator. My hands weren't shaking anymore, my heart wasn't pounding. I felt calm, focused, like I'd finally found my footing after months of stumbling around in the dark. When I got back to the van, Mike took one look at my face and started the engine. How'd it go? He asked as we pulled out of the parking lot. Better than expected, I said, but we're not done yet. What's next? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Henderson and Associates, specifically Richard Henderson himself. Now, I said, we make sure everyone knows what happened. I dialed the number and waited for it to ring. It was after hours, but I knew Henderson's reputation as a workaholic. Sure enough, he picked up on the third ring. Henderson. Mr. Henderson? This is Danny Morrison, Marta's husband. A pause. Danny, how can I help you? I think we need to talk about your employees' after-hours activities, specifically what they're doing on company time. Another pause, longer this time. I see. When would be convenient for you? How about right now? I'll be in my office in 20 minutes. I hung up and looked at Mike. Drop me off downtown. This won't take long. You sure about this, Danny? Once you do this, there's no going back. I thought about Marta in that hotel room, thought about her offering to trade me for a drink, thought about 6 weeks of lies and betrayal. I'm sure, I said. And I was. Richard Henderson was exactly what I'd expected. Silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of handshake that said he'd crushed better men than me before breakfast. His office was on the 20th floor, all glass and chrome, with a view of the city that probably cost more than my house. Danny, he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk, I have to say, this is unexpected. I imagine it is. I sat down and pulled out my phone. I've got some photos I think you should see. I showed him everything. The hotel pictures, the credit card receipts, the timestamps proving that Marta and Jake had been meeting during work hours. Henderson's expression grew darker with each image. How long has this been going on? He asked finally. 2 months, maybe longer. Henderson leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. You understand that this puts me in a very difficult position. Marta is one of my best creative directors. And Jake? Jake is replaceable. I almost smiled at that, and poor Jake thinking he was God's gift to advertising, when really he was just another disposable pretty boy. What do you want from me, Danny? Henderson asked. I assume you didn't come here just to share gossip. I want them both gone, I said. Tonight. That's not how these things work. There are procedures, HR protocols. Mr. Henderson, I interrupted. Do you know what happens when photos like these end up on social media? When your clients find out that their creative team is more interested in creating drama than advertising campaigns? Henderson's jaw tightened. That sounds like a threat. It's not a threat. It's a fact. You can handle this quietly, professionally, or you can wait for it to become a public relations nightmare. Your choice. We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Henderson reached for his phone. Security? This is Henderson. I need you to escort Jake Morrison from the building. Tonight. Yes, I know what time it is. And call HR. Tell them we need to discuss Marta Morrison's employment status first thing Monday morning. He hung up and looked at me. Satisfied? Getting there. My phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. Phase 2 is ready when you are. Phase 2 was the public humiliation part of our plan. Tommy had been busy over the past few days, spreading carefully crafted rumors through his network of bartenders, hairdressers, and gym buddies. By now, half the city knew that Marta Morrison was cheating on her husband with her subordinate. One more thing, I said to Henderson. I want her company credit cards canceled, tonight. Danny? She's been using them for personal expenses. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts for her boyfriend. I'm sure your accounting department would be very interested to see the receipts. Henderson sighed and picked up his phone again. Accounting? This is Henderson. I need you to freeze all of Marta Morrison's corporate accounts immediately. When I left Henderson's office, I felt like I was walking on air. Jake was being escorted out of the building as I reached the lobby, a security guard carrying his personal items in a cardboard box. He saw me and started to say something, but I just smiled and kept walking. Outside, Mike was waiting in his truck. How'd it go? He asked as I climbed into the passenger seat. Jake's fired. Marta will be by Monday. All her credit cards are canceled. Jesus, Danny, you don't mess around. I'm just getting started. We drove to O'Malley's, where Tommy was waiting with a bottle of whiskey and a shit-eating grin. Gentlemen, he said, raising his glass, I present to you the new king of revenge. It's not over yet, I said, but I was smiling as I said it. Oh, but the best part is, Tommy said, I've been making some calls. Turns out your wife's little boyfriend has been playing the field. 3 other women in the past 6 months, all of them married. You're kidding. Nope. And guess who just got a very interesting phone call about their husband's extracurricular activities? My phone rang before he could answer. Marta's name flashed on the screen. "Danny, please," she said when I answered. Her voice was thick with tears. "We need to talk." "I think we've said everything we need to say. Jake's been fired. They canceled my credit cards. My boss wants to see me Monday morning. What did you do?" I told the truth. "This is insane. You can't just destroy my career because you're angry." "Watch me." I hung up and turned off my phone. "She'll be back," Mike said. "When she realizes how bad this is going to get, she'll come crawling back." "Let her," I said. "I'm done." But Tommy was shaking his head. "Oh no, my friend. We're not done. Not even close." He pulled out his phone and showed me a text message. "Party at Sophie's tomorrow night. Marta's coming. Thought you should know. Sophie." Marta's best friend, the one who'd kissed me at the club, the one who'd started this whole mess. "What are you thinking?" I asked. Tommy's grin widened. "I'm thinking it's time for the grand finale." The next night, I stood outside Sophie's apartment building, my heart pounding. Tommy and Mike flanked me like bodyguards, and I could feel their confidence flowing into me. "Remember," Tommy said, "we go in, we make our statement, we leave, clean and simple." "And if things get ugly?" Mike asked. "They won't," I said, "because I'm not the one who should be ashamed." We took the elevator to the 15th floor. I could hear music and laughter coming from Sophie's apartment before we even reached her door. I knocked, and the sounds stopped immediately. Sophie opened the door, and her face went white when she saw me. "Danny," she stammered, "what are you doing here?" "I came to return something," I said, pushing past her into the apartment. The living room was full of people, Marta's work friends, her college buddies, the whole social circle that had been laughing at me behind my back for months. They all turned to stare as I walked in, and the silence was deafening. Marta was sitting on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand. When she saw me, she stood up so quickly that wine sloshed onto her dress. "Danny, you can't be here," she said. "Actually, I can," I replied. "This is a free country." I reached into my pocket and pulled out her wedding ring, the one she'd left on the bathroom counter that morning when she'd rushed off to her emergency meeting with HR. "You forgot this," I said, holding it up so everyone could see it. "Danny, please." 15 years, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. 15 years I wore a ring just like this one. 15 years I believed in the promises we made to each other. I looked around the room, making eye contact with each person there. "How many of you knew?" I asked. "How many of you knew my wife was cheating on me while I was at home, waiting for her to come back from her work dinners and her girls' nights out?" No one answered, but I could see the guilt on their faces. "That's what I thought," I said. I turned back to Marta. "You want to know the funny thing? I might have forgiven the cheating. People make mistakes, right? But what I can't forgive is the humiliation, the way you made me look like a fool in front of everyone." I tossed the ring onto the coffee table, where it landed with a small metallic clink. "So here's your ring back," I said, "and here's my promise to you. Everyone in this room is going to know exactly what kind of woman you are. Not because I'm going to tell them, but because you're going to show them." I turned to leave, then stopped and looked back one more time. "Oh, and Marta, that cocktail you wanted to trade me for? I hope it was worth it." The silence followed us all the way to the elevator. As the doors closed, I could hear the explosion of voices from Sophie's apartment, everyone talking at once, the carefully constructed facade of Marta's perfect life finally crumbling. "How do you feel?" Mike asked as we descended. I thought about it for a moment. "Free," I said finally. "I feel free." And I did. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. When we reached the lobby, Tommy clapped me on the back. "That was beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful." "It's not about being beautiful," I said. "It's about being honest." We walked out into the night air, and I took a deep breath. Tomorrow, I would file for divorce. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding my life. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of becoming the man I should have been all along. But tonight, I had done something I'd never thought I was capable of. Tonight, I had won.